Hey, what's up, ladies? Welcome to another episode of the Revitalized Womanhood podcast. I'm here with, okay, here we go. Curie Blaney. Did I do it right?
Yes.
Well, and I forgot to tell you, actually, I forgot to tell you before we started to record. I am up at my in-laws' 50-acre ranch, and so I was sitting downstairs trying to be next to the Wi-Fi, and it was just too much sun, too much amazing, beautiful sun coming through it, all these big new windows they put in. So I came upstairs into the Africa Safari room. If any of you are watching YouTube, yes, I am in Africa. Anyway, so it already told me once I didn't have internet. So if it freezes up on you, just go with it.
Okay.
And we'll just go with it. So it's like my Instagram post today said, a home office can mean from anybody's home, right? That's the dream. So that's what we're
Always.
working with here, folks. My home office has looked like Portugal, has looked like Rome. I had a guest actually tell me she wouldn't record with me in Rome because the Wi-Fi was so bad. She's like, I'm not doing this. Okay, bye. I understand. Well, thank you for putting up with me and my so-called organized life. Thank you so much. I'm really glad that we finally got some time figured out to sit down and have a chat. And would you please introduce yourself to my listeners?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Kiri, and I am known as the Confident Mompreneur on socials and everywhere else. So I am an entrepreneur. I am a mom. I'm a partner. I, like you, love to travel and bring my office everywhere, which is so nice. Just having that flexibility and ability to be and do my work from anywhere. Um, I do a lot of different things. I host my own podcast. I've written several books. I do speaking events all over the place. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of everything all the time.
Absolutely. I am so sorry if my video's as lagging as yours is, but you sound amazing. So I'm just going to go with it and we'll just figure it out as we go. So where did your journey begin in wanting to become or feeling pulled to become a confidence coach?
I think like a lot of people's stories, it just came from like me having to do the work on myself. And so I was really struggling for a long period of time. I had felt like I really lost myself in motherhood and in being a partner in an abusive relationship. And I got to a point where I realized like I couldn't continue living like that anymore. And so I made a lot of major changes, and it kind of spanned over a few years that I was like really going through that journey myself. And I had always been told my entire life, like, oh my gosh, you're so confident, like that was always a word that came up when people described me. And I was like, you know what? I want to be confident again. That's who I want to be. That's who I have always been for most of my life. I want to find that person again. And so I really went through my own journey of like, what does that look like? And I realized a big part of it was like actually getting to know who I was at like my deepest core and discovering, this new me at, the age that I am now and rediscovering what she actually likes, who she actually is, and what I really wanted out of life and just like deciding to make it happen for myself.
Where does that start? I mean, because you and I are both, we have very, very similar goals for the people that we reach and the words that come out of our mouths, the things that we're like, come on, if I could just shake it into you, just, we are very aligned in our missions. Where do you think the first step is in someone that is just a blip? Because, I've had to learn that what we have, being able to just walk up to someone and talk, or being able to just be in a room full of strangers and just, or whatever, or even driving from point A to point B, that is a confidence, right? Those kinds of things do not just come naturally to everybody. So what do you feel like your first step in saying, hey, start here?
I think it's really hard. It's a long journey, and, like, don't expect it to happen overnight. It takes a lot of, like, really small intentional steps. So, I think for me, it's like, A, recognition that I was part of the problem and that I had to do a lot of, like, inner work to really figure out, like, what does confidence mean to me? What do I actually want? And then figuring out, like, what are the steps to get me there? And so that process in and of itself took a long time, because especially when you lose yourself in things like motherhood or in our jobs or whatever, we're so tied to the titles that we hold that we sometimes forget, like, who we are without those. And so it takes a lot of, like, I would do a lot of journaling practices. I would listen to a lot of podcasts. I would read a lot of books and just, like, putting myself out there and finding that knowledge, because the first step is, like, we don't know what we don't know. So getting the knowledge and learning from people that are in the places that we see ourselves being at some point, and then just, like, taking those small, really scary steps and putting ourselves out there. Like, I just spoke at an event last week, that it was a really big place here in the small town that I live in, so big for small town, but it was in a really big place, and it was completely filled with people, and it was, like, a lot of really big, really important people, at this event, and so I spoke in front of all of them and shared some really vulnerable pieces of me and my story, and if I look back at myself 4 or 5 years ago, I would have never. I would have been so terrified. I would have been shaking up there, and like I said, that didn't happen overnight. It would start with small steps, like going up and introducing myself to somebody new. That was, like, really terrifying at the beginning. And then it was like, doing small radio interviews where it was just me and one other person interviewing. And then it continued to kind of grow and grow over time as I stepped into new uncomfortable situations, just little by little.
I like that you talked about congratulations on your speaking event. That's
Thanks.
amazing. I like that you talked about finding what you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. My husband always says books are cheat codes. Mentors are cheat codes. People that have been through something that you've never experienced are cheat codes. Why not close the gap, the time gap there? Yes, you can learn these things. That's how they learned it. That's how the people more successful learned it, is they did figure it out along the way. It took a lot of bumps. It took a lot of bruises. It took a lot of failing forward. But if you're willing to be coached, if you are willing to always be, is it Jordan Peterson that says, never to be the fool in the room? The fool in the room is someone who is unteachable, who thinks they're smarter than everyone else. And people that are the most successful are coachable. They're teachable. They want to learn all the new things. This event we're having right here is a perfect example of that. My husband is he put together this company, which you and your partner would love it. I've just listened to you and I'm like, oh gosh, you guys would love to come down here and do this. But it's like, he's not an expert in all things outdoors, right? Just because he likes doing them and he likes experiencing things like fishing, hunting, snowboarding, surfing, he likes horseback riding. He likes all of these things, but he's nowhere near a professional in them. But he's hired professionals to come and teach the class on them. He's hired a professional Dutch oven cook. He's hired a professional fly fisherman. He's hired, right? And that's like his dream. He used to say, if I didn't have to make money, I would go around and learn skills from people. Kind of like dirty jobs. He says that is the most interesting job to me, that he just goes around and does these random things. He's just learning. He's just building his base of knowledge. And if people can see, because sorry, I'm talking too much. I'm going to put it back over to you. But if people, like women, when they first come to me, and I'm sure when they first come to you, have a hard time, if I said, "What's your dream?" they might have a hard time saying or putting into words because not many people have sat down and asked them, "What is your dream?" Not what's your husband's dream, not what's your mother's dream, not what's Barbara down the street's dream, not what your best friend's dream is. What's your dream, right? And a lot of people have asked them that question, so it takes a minute. But also, you don't know if you don't know. You don't know if travel is your dream unless you start and experience it. You don't know if fishing is your dream unless you start and experience it, you know? So I love that you said that that's part of your steps you took was just knowledge, right? Just getting different perspectives and reading. That's amazing. I love that first step. Would you be willing to share, my listeners, if you don't know already, she has a podcast. Go over and listen and binge her podcast. They're great. She's got amazing guests over there with unbelievable topics. And I'd appreciate if you feel up for it, revealing a little bit of what you're talking about, why you had to be vulnerable when you share your story, because I think that has a huge part in what helps other women be brave enough to share their story. And that's these women that you have, there's a common theme throughout, and it's resiliency through challenge or through hard times or through, do you know what I mean? All of these women have gone through something that they came out on the other side 100 times stronger because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love everything that you just said there. And I always like classify myself as a lifelong learner. I went back to college after I had my son, after I had dropped out before. And I always tell people, like, maybe college is not for everybody, and that's okay. But, like, find some way to continue learning at all points in
A
time.
library card.
Yeah, there's so many resources out there in this day and age. Like, just Google and you can find so many resources. But like you said, I don't like being the fool in the room, but I do enjoy being the dumbest person in the rooms that I walk into because I'm open to learning and being in those rooms with people that know more to me than me. Like, I always just like learn so much. And so that's me. I'm always trying to learn new things and do new skills. I just competed in my first powerlifting competition a week and a half ago. And I said the same thing. I'm like, I just don't know what I don't know. I walked in and was like, okay, well, I have a lot to learn. And so now I get to learn and grow in that space. So I'm constantly challenging myself to try new things and put myself in new positions and stuff just so that I can continue learning. But, which leads me to why I started my podcast. Um, Obviously, like you said, there's all these wonderful coaches and things out there that you can hire and bring on to kind of help you with things that you're going through, whether it's a life coach, whatever. But as a newly single mom, I didn't have a lot of like resources when it came to money, but I was like, but I want to learn. Want to learn and I need to figure out a way to do that for myself. And I was reading and I was listening to other people's podcasts and stuff, but I realized I had so many amazing women already around me that I could learn from, but we don't really like dive into those things just like when we're hanging out and being girlfriends. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own podcast. And so I did. And the whole thing was like, I want to learn for myself from these women because I see that they've gone through these hard things and they've come out on the other side better for it. And they're doing amazing things. They're making change for themselves, their families, their communities. I want to be like them. I want to learn from them. And so I always tell people I do the podcast 100% for myself. It's very selfish, but if another person gets to hear it and it makes some sort of an impact on them too, awesome. Like, but it's always been about, like, selfishly learning, from these people myself. So, yeah, I've interviewed over 120 women now, from all over the globe, and it has just taught me so much. And, as I've gone through my own journey of really difficult things, just having the strength of other women to lift me up has been so incredible, and I don't think I could have done it without it. But, like you said, I spoke at that event last week, and it was actually a Shark Tank style competition, for nonprofits in our community, and so I was a survivor speaker for a nonprofit. It's called Safe Project, and they help victims of sexual assault, domestic violence, and stalking. And so, just over 2 years ago, I was violently assaulted in my own home and beaten pretty severely, and went through the very long court process for that. Still kind of dealing with some of the ramifications of all of that. Just a few weeks ago, actually, his appeal was denied because he was put in prison for 6 to 8 years. But it's been a long journey. There's been a lot of like mental health, things that I've had to work through with that. I attempted suicide a year and a half ago. And so it's really been like, it knocked me down a few pegs. And so I've been really intentionally working on, again, finding and developing my own confidence in this new version of me that I've had to kind of build from the ground up again.
And absolutely, I am with you. My listeners just about died laughing when you're saying that your podcast is selfish. It's for your own. I get to sit with coaches that charge thousands of dollars for the hour, and I get to pick their brain. Like, I love it. It is so selfish. It's amazing. But it is like you say, it's not just selfish. It is trying to get the information out there of these topics that are usually not spoken about.
Yeah.
Because I believe that once people like you who are brave enough to come forward and speak their truth and talk about these situations that they've survived through and now living through, um, it makes it easier for the other person who's sitting in the dark, feeling alone and lost and like they don't have anywhere to turn, like nobody understands them, right? Because I bet that's probably how you felt. You felt like nobody could possibly understand what I'm feeling. My mother-in-law,
Absolutely.
I actually interviewed her on here when I first started, and she lost her husband when they were 27 years old, her high school sweetheart. She had 2 kids, like 5 and 3, I believe they were. That could be a little off. But anyway, she was pregnant with my husband, 7 months pregnant with my husband, and she lost her husband. They were so young. And she says, "I remember looking at people thinking, and they were just living their lives." And she said, "I thought, don't you know? Don't you know what's happened? Why is everything continuing like normal? Don't you understand how I'm feeling? You don't understand that the world should be shut down right now because I've lost this man, you know?
Mhm.
And you feel so alone." But luckily, we have these kind of platforms now that we can get these amazing women who are willing to talk about and share their stories so that the rest of them don't feel so alone. They feel like I can do this too. If she can do this, I can do this. And I was actually listening to one of your episodes. I think it was your wrap up. It was either your wrap up or your top 100 episode or top 10 episodes. And you talked about, oh, lost my train of thought. Shouldn't have looked out the window. Dang it. Oh, anyway, sorry about that. That happens sometimes. Sometimes I sit up and it comes back. But so in advocating, we'll get to a question then let you talk because I talk way too much. In advocating for women to build their confidence through life's challenges, right? What key insights have you found best help these women reclaim their sense of self-confidence?
Um, being selfish. Like, I love
Yes.
selfish. And I think for too long, especially for women, we have like this sense of self shame around anything when it comes to being selfish. Like, that's like the worst name that, a person could ever call you, is calling you selfish. And I think we need to kind of reclaim that term and really think about like doing things for ourselves, because I think when we do things for ourselves, it actually makes not just us better, but those around us too. Because I, as a mom, I have realized that when I take the time for myself to do the things that I need and to like really get the joy and fulfillment that I need out of things outside of my home, I'm actually a way better mom too. Like, it all comes together. And I think that's what's so important as women to recognize, is that like we aren't like men where we like put each piece of our world into separate nice little boxes. Like, everything runs together. And so when we feel confident in one area, it leaks into all of the other areas of our life too.
I love that you said that. Could not have been a more perfect. I will never stop saying it. It is not selfish. It is self-full. It is critical. It is seriously, I'm my poor
Self-loving.
mom. It's self-loving. It's the most important form of love is self-love, right? We're taught this, or it's something that's so cliche, but it's how can you love someone else if you can't even love yourself?
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. And when you think about that, moms, okay, because you're the biggest problem here. Moms are the biggest problem, right? They feel like they're falling on their sword. They feel like they're wearing this badge of honor
Yeah.
because they're constantly just giving and giving and giving and giving. And it's like, do you want to give the best of you or just the rest of you? Like, imagine a sponge soaking up all of this goodness and happiness and joy. There's got to be like a movie where this shows, oh, it's the flamingo. The flamingo is the only thing in nature that actually loses its pink because of how much it gives to its young. And
Yep.
it's like, I don't understand how they can't see that you love this little person so much. Imagine how much you would love them if you could love yourself that much too. Like, it would just,
Absolutely.
the quantifying of that would just be enormous. I'm having a
Yeah.
hard time with words today. I'm sorry. I've been
No,
running
you're good.
around.
Well, and
Anyway,
I was gonna say too, for me, as I've kind of gone along this journey, our kids watch every little thing that we do, and they want to be so much like us. So when they see us like constantly giving, giving, giving to the point of burnout and exhaustion and mental health issues and stuff, they see that. But they also see if we're able to turn around and put time into ourselves. They see us being happy. They see us being fulfilled. They see us, working on ourselves. And that rubs off on them too. Like I told you, I do powerlifting. And so I am in the gym every day during the week. I go every single day. And so it doesn't matter if, it's the weekend. My son knows as soon as he gets up in the morning on the weekends, he eats breakfast and then we go to the gym. And it's so funny because he now that the gym is one of his favorite places to be. He gets to hang out with mom, and he knows everybody in there now because we go all the time. He knows where all of his equipment is that he uses, and he like goes in there and he'll play soccer and he'll lift weights, and I'm pretty sure he thinks he owns that place at this point, and he might, because everybody just adores him. But like, that is such a regular part of our routine now, and he loves it as much as I love it. And yeah, it sucked at the beginning, and it was really hard at the beginning, to bring him into, my workouts would take twice as long. But now that we've gotten that, kind of set in stone, and we've been doing it for such a long time, it's just a natural part of our routine.
well, and you're creating healthy habits, that's a healthy habit that now he is just This is a normal thing now. He's done it so often that
Uh-huh.
it's become a natural normal. I call it a natural normal. Like for my kids, riding in their car seats is a natural normal. We road trip all the time. Getting in an airplane, it's a
Yep.
natural normal. They're fine with it. That's just something they do. If you are instilling these kind of good habits of self-discipline, it's already going to be ingrained in them for when they have these moments in life when they're older that they have to jump a hurdle or, get through a challenge, something they'll think, I can do that. This is just like that time I went to the gym and I learned how to lift and then I lifted heavier and then
Mhm.
I lifted right. My little guy, he's
Yep.
3 and he knows whether it's the big school or the little school. He calls it school. I want to go to school. And he says sometimes I'll pull up and he says, "Not this school. I want to go to the big school." And I'm like, "Oh boy.
Mhm.
Okay." But, it's we're teaching him. I saw a reel on Instagram and it was so cool and so simple and it said, "If you're telling your kids to go outside and play, show them how to go outside and play."
Mhm.
Because how often are moms and dads, like, sitting on their phones, watching TV, and it's like, "Go out and play. Go out and play." And the kids are like, "Well, I wanna do what you're doing." They don't maybe they're not even saying it, but they're seeing this example set for them. So if you want them to go outside and play, go show them how to go outside and play.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I love that you said that because I was talking with another mom in the gym the other day, and she was like, he sees you coming and doing the thing, and it instills those healthy habits. And like, he's never going to feel intimidated in the gym. For a lot of
Right.
people, that's a very intimidating space to walk into if you've never been in there. He's never going to have that feeling. And also, it gives permission to the other parents and, especially moms that are trying to take that time and space to go to the gym to bring their kids too. They love seeing that, like my kid's always in there. And if they bring their kids, they're going to have a friend to hang out with. And, so it gives permission to other people to do the same thing too. And I love that you talk about that outdoors and things because that's kind of one of those things that you and I share is our love for the outdoors and love for traveling and stuff, and that's definitely something that I instill in my son too. He's been, mountain biking with me since he was 3.5, and people are like, "What? My kid can't even ride a regular bike," but it was just something that he saw me doing it, and he was like, "Mom, I wanna do that," and I was like, "Okay, in order to do that, you gotta ride your bike." And I do dirt biking too, and I was like, "Okay, you have to be able to ride your bike, training wheels, in the dirt where you can ride a dirt bike." So, like, he's always had that, like, push of, like, "Well, I would think that mom's doing, so I better learn how to do this."
You know what, too? For those moms, I should say moms, women out there that this one is specifically for moms, but for those moms out there that maybe feel a little unprepared for those kinds of things, it's you and I both know that the biggest fear is the unknown, right? It's like
Mhm.
your lifting competition. You got there, you don't know what to expect, you kind of don't, but once you get the lay of the land, next year you're going to come back to it with this much more information, this much more confidence, this much more knowledge. And so the first time is always something, but I had this mom in my community, this woman that said it was the monthly topic was around fear. And she said, "Honestly, I am not the kind of person that would ever go and try something new like this or whatever." But she said, "Because I wanted to show my daughter how to not let fear stop you, I did it first, thinking to myself the whole time, this is terrifying. What I'm about to do, this just makes me so upset and nervous, but I'm not going to let her know because I don't want her to have that same paralyzing fear just because it's the unknown." Do you know what I mean? So she used that as a diving board for her own growth, is just an example to her child. So it's like, get it from wherever you can. If you
Yeah.
can find the courage, source it from anywhere you possibly can. I've got a gal that came to my retreat last year that's mortified of open water. So scared of it. Cannot. And I was so proud of her. She got on, we did paddle boarding. And one of my other friends threw her on the front of her board and says, "I will paddle you around, jump on the front of my board." And she did it. And I was so proud of her. But, pull from any source you possibly can, but don't be afraid to at least just ask for help. And that, I think, will open up at least a door to whatever the next step might be, right?
Yeah, no, I love everything you just said because I think, especially as moms, we're way more inclined to do things for our kids than we ever are to do it for ourselves. And so I think we use that as a motivation. And also, I think, like you said, accountability, especially when you're trying new things or like you're doing really hard things, is super important. And that can in itself can be a really like scary step. I know when I was first starting out in business, like I was very secretive about it. I didn't want anybody to know about it cuz like what if I couldn't do it? What if I failed? Like then, I would have to answer to all of these people around me. And actually kind of good because that fear actually helped me push through a lot of barriers that I don't think I would have otherwise. And so I think having the right kinds of people in your circle that are willing to hold you accountable to your goals and the things that you're going for and the dreams that you're chasing is super important. And also like having people that are willing to step up and help, but you have to also be willing to ask for help because people can't read our minds and we need to take that step too. And that's really hard, especially as moms. We like to feel in control of things all of the time
Oh my gosh.
and we just can't be and we have to be willing to stop and ask for help sometimes. That's okay. We all need it.
Yeah.
We all need help sometimes.
It's okay, and it feels so good when you finally do, when you finally allow, because it's actually in our nature to not like, I don't know why it's become such a masculine vibe for women to, "I got this. I can do this. I'm gonna crush this." Probably because of just I don't even wanna say toxic masculinity because that was such a thing that was just thrown around so often, but I mean unhealthy relationships, like, I think unhealthy boundaries, unhealthy relationships have created this whole women basically flying clear to the other side of the spectrum, not being able to live in their femininity. I was talking to one of my members the other day that was like, maybe you didn't feel like you were allowed to let him take the reins. You didn't make him, so in that respect, you didn't give him the opportunity to let his masculine side, his protector, provider, these masculine innate energies in him, you didn't allow for that, so he didn't feel like he could do that for you. So maybe that's why he moved on, looking for that, looking for someone that he could do that with. It's we have to not be afraid. I honestly, I can speak to this so much because I have a very hard time with, I never wanna feel like a doormat. Something in me from my childhood has always just been, don't be a pushover, don't be a doormat, don't be, and which is so interesting because it's done is made me push back and fight against my husband in ways where maybe he's not trying to be domineering, but because I have my own insecurities or traumas behind that, it comes off that way. And so instead, I have to bristle up and turn on all of this masculine energy, get out of my feminine. And then what does he want to do to that? He's like, never mind. Like, I'll
Yeah.
just go. If you got this, you got this. And then we're mad at him, Then it's like, well, why didn't you help me? Like, who wants that porcupine? Who wants to hug that? Like, nobody.
Right. No, I love what you're saying so much and I resonate with it because, I was in an abusive relationship for 8 years and I definitely was the doormat where I just let him kind of run over me and then I definitely swung to the other side where I was that, very hyper masculine like, you know, I had to kind of take back control, and so I think that's why I did that. But then now trying to, like, heal from all of it has been so difficult, and I think I am realizing, and this is actually something I've talked about with several different women on my podcast, is like learning how to live in my feminine and lead in my feminine. And, especially as a business owner, like it is such a beautiful thing if we can do it correctly. And it gives us, like as women, we're built to be receivers. We're built to receive love. We're built to receive goodness. And we're also built for service, and so that's why, when women are typically leaving their homes to go work, we're doing it for things that we truly believe in. We think are going to bring value to the world around us in some way. Um, my partner now is a very masculine man, and so he's kind of had to like coach me into like, no, let me take care of you. Let me
Yeah.
like be there for you. Let me lead in my masculine and allow you to be soft and feminine. And while I still struggle with that some days, like I think it is very nice, especially being like a, businesswoman that has to be kind of in control all day long and making lots of decisions and doing those things to just kind of be able to relax and let go when he's with me. Um, we're we're just about to head to California, hopefully this weekend. And one of the things that he always does is he always plans all of our trips and he pays for everything. And all I do is show up with a bag. And he even tells me what to pack. Like, I just show up with my bag of clothes and say, okay, where we going? What we doing? And he's got it. And that is so, so nice. And, it's definitely hard to learn if you don't work on like healing those insecurities and childhood wounds and things that have led you to that point where you feel like you have to be that porcupine and kind of push everybody away. But when we learn to relax and be soft and be feminine, that doesn't mean that we can't still be like amazing business women. We absolutely can while leading from our feminine.
You actually just rolled me right into this question that I've been wanting to ask, and it's how do you help people build? Now, do you just work with women? That was a question I had earlier, actually. I just assume you work with women. I
Yeah.
honestly, I feel like we're so aligned that I'm like, oh, maybe next time I take a trip, she can just fill in for me. No, so with these women, with the process of trying to build authentic confidence, right? And I'm actually going to say self-confidence, and I'll tell you why. I think that there is a distinction between confidence and self-confidence. I
The
think
outward
confidence,
versus the inward.
yes, anybody
Yeah.
can have confidence. You can know how to tie a fishing fly. You can know how to cook a Dutch oven. You can know how to, sorry, I'm absolutely in this event, obviously. You can know how to saddle a horse, and that is confidence. You can teach people. You have that information. That's outward. Anybody can do that. But self-confidence is something that is in you. You have got to build that love and that trust. The trust part of being, it's not always going to be okay. It's not. That's just life. It's not always going to be okay. It's going to be sometimes sitting in the suck of it. And the self-confidence part comes out when you are able to trust that even though some days you want to sit on the couch and watch Netflix, some days you go a week without going to the gym, some days you let the laundry pile up, but the self-confidence is that faith in yourself, that trust that you've built with yourself, that once you're done sitting in the suck, you'll get right back to it. You're able and capable of getting right back to the path that you want that leads you to becoming the woman. I call it On the Other Side of the Wildflowers. It's such a Twilight reference where she sees her grandmother on the other side, and she thinks it's her grandma, but it's really her. But I think that. But so getting back to my question here, how do you help them build this authentic confidence versus a sense of self-belief that's like have you ever heard of, like, you protested too much, right? So people that have not done the real work are overly confident. Like, you can almost pick them out. I have one person in my mind specifically, and I know she went through some things and never got the help for it. And now as a grown woman, it's like overbearingly confident with things. So what is your training, I guess, steps in really doing the hard work first to building the authentic confidence?
Well, I think there's a lot that goes into it. But I love that you talk about that because I think like if you look at like say most models in the industry, a lot of people will walk by them and say like they really have that outward confidence, but then you get to talking to them and you get to know them and they are struggling with self-image, they are struggling with lots of things on the inside that they just don't know how to handle, don't know how to talk about. Um so I think sometimes it's like you said, owning that suck, being willing to like sit in it and really feel it and work through it. Um, when I went through my like really deep, dark kind of part of life and was working on rebuilding, after I attempted suicide, I went into the psych ward for a little bit. And one of the things that we really worked through there that I think anybody should work through um, is like recognizing the stories that we tell ourselves in our head about the things that we've been through and the things that we've done and what they mean. And what I mean by that is like when I went through the sexual assault, I took a lot of that on myself. I had a lot of self-shame around that and what it meant for me, that I wasn't worthy of having a good relationship anymore, that I was used, that I would never be good again, that there was a lot of just like those worries that I was putting on myself about what had happened to me and what that meant about me at the core. And I had to recognize like these things are actually true. And I had to replace all of that negative mindset, negative thinking with positive thinking. And that happens slowly over time. Like we don't obviously shift from like one complete end of the spectrum where we just like talk crap about ourselves all the time to all of a sudden thinking you're the most amazing person in the world. It takes like slow intentional steps and like recognizing when we have those negative thoughts or when we're having struggles with things, or even I always talk about the mirror effect, like recognizing that we see something in somebody else that we really don't like. And usually that has more to do with us than it has to do with them. And just like really thinking through those things and recognizing those negative patterns in our lives and starting to break ourselves free from them. Body image was a really big one for me for a really long time. I was a cheerleader in college. So I had the coach that was always telling me that I was too big to be a cheerleader, that I was never going to be good enough, because of my body. And so that's taken a lot of years of unpacking and working through. And now, I get to see my body as just a vessel for all of the things that I want to do. And I treat it as such. I have a very healthy relationship with fitness and working out because I do those things to be able to do like go on massive hikes with my partner to beautiful places, or to be able to play with my kid daily or whatever. But, just rewriting those narratives in our heads, I think is the most important step. And then creating habits to support those positive thinking that we're bringing in, and like to set goals for ourselves. Because I feel like, especially like if you're a mom and a stay-at-home mom, you don't really like traditionally set goals for yourself. And I think that's something that we need to fix, because there should always be a goal in your mind of something bigger, something better that we're working towards. Because if we just sit stagnant, we're always going to like get into our own heads, find something to like fill that time and space, and it's usually negative. So if we can fill that time and space with something positive, something that we're working towards, something that we're becoming better at, I think it really helps that confidence with us. And especially when we start building those habits and we learn that we're actually more capable than we originally thought, like that self-confidence just grows a little bit more. And then we do something else new and learn that we can do something else, and it grows a little bit more. And like I said, once you start kind of growing in one area of confidence, it tends to spread to all of the other areas of our life if we let it to. But it really just starts with our own minds and our own heads.
I want to ask you, but I have a point kind of to it, is my question is going to be, and actually I think it will be your confident workbook and journal. You are the author of two different books, and one is a confident workbook and one is a journal. And I guarantee, I haven't had the chance to look at that yet, but I'm really interested in it because I bet a lot of things in it come back to gratitude, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Because
So,
even when we're in the suck of it, being able to, because like I said, this post, oh, good, you have them there. Like I said, this post I just did earlier, and it was, we lost everything. We lost everything. It was devastating. We lost our house. I was 7 months pregnant with our first baby. We lost this lifestyle of living that we thought it was what's expected, right? It's the keeping up with the Joneses whole concept of, when you're young and in your 20s, whatever. But I look back on it now and I think I was never unhappy. I wasn't. I was never unhappy. I would not, in those times, which would have been considered our darkest days, I would have never said it that way. I never felt sad. I felt like, oh, that's too bad. I felt things around, like, because these things were happening, my husband was in a kind of a depression, or, so we weren't connecting. I remember thinking things like that, but I remember thinking we are so blessed that we have somewhere to be, right? We have someone that we could lean on. We have a job. And at the time I was making $14 an hour. That's how I supported us, and we have a brand new baby. And I remember we've got so many happy memories from that time in our life, which really would have been the worst time of our life, right? And I don't think of it that way. So how in these moments do you help say these women who are in the suck of it find the light, right? Find that shimmer of something, like today you woke up, because sometimes that's it, right? I
yeah.
mean, even being grateful that you woke up, like you said, with people with like suicidal thoughts, that's you can't even feel grateful for that.
Yeah. I think there's a couple things that you said there that were really great. I think finding your own definition of success is very important, because success to me probably looks different than success to you. And, success to a billionaire looks different than success to my next door neighbor. Like everybody has their own definition of success, and you need to figure out what it means and what it looks like for you. Um, and so I think that's the first part, is like know yourself well enough to be able to set goals for yourself that are not those keeping up with the Joneses types of goals. They're the success for you goals. If that looks like, for me, one of my goals this year was to take a month and a half off to travel during the summer. Like, obviously, I'm not going to be making a ton of money during that point in time, but that is success to me because I get to travel, I get to see new places, I get to be with the people I love the most. And I've created a system so that I can make that happen. And that to me looks like success. And then the other thing that you brought up was like choosing to be grateful for the small things. And on those dark days, like that can feel really hard. That can be a really, really big ask. And that's where I think like having good people around you is so important because sometimes we need somebody else to tell us, like what we should be grateful for, and to help us see those brighter sides of life. Like you said, I also have a journal, and I came up with this journal practice while I was kind of going through some really hard things. So the first question that I always ask myself is like, how am I feeling today? Like recognition of like where I'm at mentally and physically and like what I need to do. What is my body telling me that it needs today? Listening to our bodies is huge for me because I feel like, especially as women, we'll run our bodies to the point of burnout and then our body tells us what it needs from us by making us sick if it's too.
Yeah.
Number 3 is how can I show up for myself today? We have to show up for ourselves. What that looks like can be different on days. How to show up for myself today? How can I show up for others today? Because I think service is huge. When I know that I'm going through really dark, hard points in time, if I can make somebody else smile, if I can make somebody else feel a little less alone, that makes me feel better too. Like, so I always try to figure out how I can show up for others. 3 things that I'm grateful for today, and they should be those little things, not like a big thing like having a house or, doing anything like that. But like one of my things on here is yummy food and warm coffee while I was doing my journaling. And then top 3 priorities for today. And those things should be directly tied to your goals, which are tied to your definition of success. So that's kind of my journaling practice that I do every day. And I also have a habit tracker in there that allows me to track my habits that I'm really engaged in staying on top of at that moment. But also, you brought this up earlier, and I think it's a really big and important point is like being willing to share the really hard crap we're going through. Because I've found that as I've shared my story and the really difficult things that I've been through, I've found that I'm not as alone as I think, and that there are other women that have gone through similar things and have made it out on the other side. And so when I do things like that speaking event, I had so many people come up to me afterwards and be like, thank you so much for sharing. I have never shared my story. And you made me feel less alone. You made me feel heard. You made me feel understood. You made me feel like maybe I could have, spoke up about this. And so I think that's really important too, is like being willing to be vulnerable in those really hard parts of life. Because we all go through really hard parts of life. Like, no matter who you are, like, something is going to knock you down, but you need to be willing to find those around us that are willing to step up and, like, really get us through those really tough, really hard things.
Yeah, that's why I absolutely think that community is key. Community is so important. Even if it's 2 people, community, finding your people, and I mean really finding your people. And when you find your people, it is easy. It doesn't feel, you don't feel like you have an elephant sitting on your chest if you can't make it to coffee that day, because you know that that person understands you and would be like, I got you. What can I do for you? If today's running you ragged, how can I step in and help you? Or that person, same thing, that you would never get defensive if they told you that something you did hurt their feelings. You were unintentional in that, and they shared that with you. You are a safe place for them to share that with. And you acknowledging, oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Those are people, those are relationships where I'm just telling you, like you said, check in with your body, check in with how you're feeling, because the ones that are not your people give you angst, give you anxiety, give you those moments of, I'm supposed to do this. Like, what are you supposed to do? You're the only one that can determine what you're supposed to do. Like, what do you want to do? Maybe switch it to, how am I feeling? What do I want to do? I could not have asked these questions better. You wrapped it up for me beautifully. You are exactly a beacon of this beautiful example of what women can do for each other. And just like you said, people coming up and saying, thank you for sharing your story. Have you read Kira's new book yet?
I am like halfway through it at the moment.
Oh my gosh, she's blowing my mind. She's blowing my mind.
Yes, I love
So
it.
I'm going to do a monthly topic around creation, and I want to leave this conversation with maybe the thought behind we are all creators, right? Just like Kira's book said, we are all creators. We are creating our own stories. We are creating our own versions of what this life looks like. You are not here to create a replica of what someone else's life looks like. You are writing your own story. I love it when Kate Winslet in The Holiday says, you should be the main character in your own story, for God's sakes, right? Or however she says it. She's not the leading lady. She always says that she's the quirky friend. And she's like, you should be the leading lady. Damn it, right? Whatever. However she says it so beautifully. And it's like, just remember that. You are the leading lady, right? You are the person that's determining where this story goes and how it goes. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for just going with the flow with what is my life. And that is what it is. And where can everyone come find you?
I am everywhere at The Confident Mompreneur. So that's my handle on Instagram. I'm very engaged there. If you message me, I'll message you right back. And you can find my podcast, The Confident Mompreneur, on any of the platforms, and www.theconfidentmompreneur.com. You can see all of my events and upcoming things that I've got going on. So
That's
thank
amazing.
you
And you know
so
what,
much.
listeners, go over to her podcast and do me a favor, like I always ask for you here. The smallest thing goes the longest way for us. Leave a review, rate and review. It helps us so much to get our message out. And this message for us as women is just empowering for each other to do the things, right? And so help us get this message out by rating and reviewing these podcast episodes. It's like the tiniest thing, but it is volumes. It speaks volumes for us, and it moves mountains. So thank you so much for being here with me, and we'll get with you later.
Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful.